Good evening, and welcome to Election Night in America 2024, in our coverage of the presidential race between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. After a whirlwind of a campaign that featured multiple assassination attempts on Trump and Joe Biden's late exit from the race, we have finally arrived at the moment where the American people will decide on the 47th President of the United States. It is now 7 p.m. here on the East Coast, and we're about to make our very first projections. Voting is about to end in the state of Georgia, which was the closest race in 2020 and will once again be extremely consequential. And so at this hour, polls are closing in Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, South Carolina, Virginia, and Vermont. Combined, they make up 60 electoral college votes. Starting off in Georgia, Donald Trump is the projected winner. This is a huge victory for the former president right off the bat. He is going to flip the Peach State and win its 16 electoral votes. He lost the state to Joe Biden by under a quarter of a percentage point, but against Kamala Harris, he emerges victorious. Trump is also going to carry Mike Pence's home state of Indiana, winning its 11 electoral votes. He's also the projected winner in Kentucky, an additional 8 electoral votes, and in South Carolina, Donald Trump, the projected winner, 9 electoral votes from the home state of Lindsey Graham. However, in Virginia, Kamala Harris is going to come out on top here. She's going to win the state's 13 electoral votes, but by just half of Joe Biden's 10-point margin from 4 years ago. And then in Vermont, Kamala Harris, the projected winner, 3 additional electoral votes going into her column. And so after the first poll closing of the night, Donald Trump takes an early lead with 44 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 16. It is now 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We have a few more projections to make, most notably in North Carolina, where Democrats have come up just short in the last 2 election cycles, but the Tar Heel state is still going to be incredibly competitive, decided by a narrow margin. And so at this hour, voting is going to end in just 3 states: North Carolina, Ohio, and West Virginia. Right off the bat, Donald Trump, the projected winner in the Tar Heel state, North Carolina's 16 electoral votes going to the former president, a state he narrowly won in both of the last 2 elections. This time, he'll win by just under 1%, but nonetheless, we have 16 critical electoral college votes going to Donald Trump. Trump is also the projected winner in Ohio, 17 electoral votes, another state that he's winning for the 3rd time in a row. Donald Trump is going to win it by just under a 10-point margin. The Buckeye State remains in the Republican column. And then in West Virginia, of course, Donald Trump, the projected winner of its 4 electoral votes. And so after the second poll closing of the night, not too much has changed, but Donald Trump does maintain his lead. He is now at 81 electoral votes. Kamala Harris still at just 16. We're now flying over Miami, Florida, as we prepare for the largest poll closing of the night. Voting is about to end in 17 states across the country, as well as the District of Columbia, with a handful of key races on the line. At 8 p.m. here on the East Coast, polls are closing in Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, the District of Columbia, Florida, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Mississippi, Missouri, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and Tennessee. We'll start off in Alabama, where Donald Trump is the projected winner. He's going to carry the state's 9 electoral votes. Meanwhile, in Connecticut, Kamala Harris is going to come out on top, winning the solid blue state's 7 electoral college votes. In Delaware, this is Joe Biden's home state, Kamala Harris the projected winner. She's also going to win the District of Columbia, which has never voted Republican since it began participating in presidential elections. Kamala Harris is going to take the district's 3 electoral votes. Next up in Florida, Donald Trump will come out on top once again. He's going to win the state for a 3rd time in a row, taking all 30 of its electoral votes. And he's going to win Florida by his largest margin yet, defeating the vice president in the state by just under 7 points. In Maine, Kamala Harris is the projected winner. She's going to win 3 out of the state's 4 split electoral votes. She's going to win the state of Maine at large, as well as its 1st congressional district. In the 2nd district, though, Trump is the projected winner. He's going to win the district's 1 electoral vote, defeating Kamala Harris by around 8 points. Moving on to Maryland, Kamala Harris is easily going to win the state's 10 electoral votes, although we do have a surprisingly competitive Senate election going on right now, with Republican Larry Hogan giving Democrat Angela Alsobrooks a run for her money. The vice president is also going to win Massachusetts, an additional 11 electoral votes going to Kamala Harris. Meanwhile, in Mississippi, Donald Trump is going to come out on top. No surprises here. He's going to win the state's 6 electoral votes. And in Missouri, an additional 10 electoral college votes going to Donald Trump. Moving on to New Hampshire, Kamala Harris is the projected winner. She's going to win the Granite State's 4 electoral votes. She's going to carry it by just under 6 points. For reference, Joe Biden won it by over 7 4 years ago. In Oklahoma, though, Donald Trump, the projected winner, he's going to win the state's 7 electoral votes. The former president will also carry Pennsylvania. This is another big victory for the former president. 19 electoral votes from the Keystone State going to Donald Trump, a state he won in 2016 but lost in 2020. He will carry it this time by 0.5%, making the margin more narrow than it was in the last 2 cycles. Kamala Harris, though, is still going to win Rhode Island, another solid blue state up in New England, 4 additional electoral votes going into the Harris column. And finally, in Tennessee, Donald Trump is the projected winner, 11 electoral votes. And so after the largest poll closing of the night, we have some big changes on the map. Donald Trump has flipped both Pennsylvania and Georgia and has held on to North Carolina. He is now on the cusp of 200 electoral votes. He's sitting at 174. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris hasn't even hit 100 yet. She's at just 94. It is now 8:30 Eastern Time. Voting is ending in just the state of Arkansas. And of course, there's no surprise, Donald Trump is the projected winner. He'll win Arkansas's 6 electoral votes. And so as the former president continues to expand his electoral college lead, he is now at 180 electoral votes. We're now approaching our 9 p.m. poll closing. This is the second largest of the night. A lot of key states on the line, and after this point, we'll have a pretty good sense as to who the 47th president is going to be, with voting about to end in 15 states across the country. Polls have closed in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Nebraska, New Mexico, New York, North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. We'll start off in Arizona, where Donald Trump is the projected winner. 11 electoral votes going to the former president, his 3rd flip on the map so far. A state that Joe Biden carried by 0.3% 4 years ago, Donald Trump now emerges victory by nearly 1.5. The former president will take Arizona back, a state he won by nearly 4 points against Hillary Clinton. In Colorado, though, Kamala Harris is the projected winner, 10 electoral votes going to the vice president. She will win it by just over a double-digit margin. For reference, though, Joe Biden won Colorado by nearly 14, but it's still 10 electoral votes nonetheless. In Iowa, Donald Trump is going to win the state for a 3rd time in a row. He's the projected winner of Iowa's 6 electoral votes. He's won it by around 8 to 9 points in the past. This time he wins it by a similar margin. He's at 53%. The vice president 9 points behind. Moving on to Kansas, Donald Trump is, of course, the projected winner. 6 additional electoral votes now in the former president's column. He'll also win Louisiana, the home state of Speaker Mike Johnson. 8 electoral votes going to Trump. In Michigan, though, this is the first swing state that Kamala Harris will win. 15 electoral votes from the Wolverine state. Kamala Harris is the projected winner in Michigan. She's going to carry it by just under 1%. It is still incredibly close, much less than Joe Biden's 3% margin of victory from 2020, but a win is a win. Kamala Harris wins Michigan, 15 electoral votes going in her favor. In Minnesota, Kamala Harris is once again the projected winner. This is the home state of her running mate, Governor Tim Walz. 10 electoral votes going to the vice president. She wins it by just under 5%, less than Joe Biden's margin of victory here from 2020, even though Harris is running with the state's governor. In Nebraska, Donald Trump is going to win 4 out of the state's 5 split electoral votes. He's going to win the state at large, as well as both its 1st and 3rd districts. While in the 2nd district, Kamala Harris will win. This basically encompasses the Omaha area. 1 electoral vote going to the vice president. She's going to carry it by just under 10 points. In New Mexico, Kamala Harris is also the projected winner here, 5 electoral votes, although her margin is definitely weaker than Joe Biden's. Biden carried the state by 11 4 years ago. Today, Vice President Harris wins by less than 8. And then in New York, Kamala Harris is actually victorious here as well, even though Democrats were worried for quite a while that she could actually lose the Empire State for the first time in 40 years, and no Democrat has done that. But the 28 electoral votes ultimately will go in Vice President Harris's favor, although Republicans have made huge gains. In North Dakota, Donald Trump is, of course, the projected winner, 3 electoral votes. He'll win an additional 3 from South Dakota as well. And then in Texas, Trump will win the Lone Star State and its 40 electoral votes for a 3rd time in a row. No Republican has lost Texas since 1976, but the state is definitely trending to the left. However, Trump actually expanded from his margin in 2020, winning Texas today by over 8 points. He only won by 5 against Joe Biden. In Wyoming, this is the 2nd battleground victory for Kamala Harris. She's going to win the state's 10 electoral votes, but it's very unlikely that this will be enough. She's going to win it by just 0.1%. It will no doubt be the closest race of the night. And finally, in Wyoming, Donald Trump, the projected winner, 3 electoral votes. And so we've now reached a key moment of this race. Donald Trump on the cusp of 270 electoral votes. He is at 264. Vice President Harris not even at 200. She's back at just 173. It does seem that at this point, Donald Trump is on track to win the presidency, barring any huge surprises. Before I continue, I want to tell you guys about Polymarket, the world's largest prediction market, where you can track election results and instantly see who's leading. These odds react in real time to current events instead of days later like the polls. There's no bias or media spin, just pure data. Market odds reflect the collective analysis, beliefs, and wisdom of thousands of traders reacting to world events. Polymarket has also recently launched a mobile app where you can access their 2024 election forecast on the go. It's what I use every day to stay updated on the presidential race. Download it for free right now using the QR code on screen or the link in the description below. Welcome back to our coverage. We're now approaching the end of the night. Only a few more poll closings left. We're now flying over Colorado, which was just called an hour ago, but we have a few more states on the line, specifically the Silver State of Nevada. And so at 10 p.m. here Eastern Time, voting has ended in Montana, Nevada, and Utah. In Montana, of course, Donald Trump is the projected winner. He'll win the state's 4 electoral votes. In the Senate election, incumbent Senator Jon Tester has been unseated by Republican challenger Tim Sheehy. In Nevada, we have more good news for Republicans. Donald Trump becomes the first GOP candidate to win the Silver State in 20 years, flipping Nevada and winning its 6 electoral votes. Trump comes out on top by just 0.2% in a state that Biden carried by 2.4 4 years ago. And finally, in Utah, Donald Trump, the projected winner, 6 electoral votes from the home state of Mitt Romney. And so with those victories, we can now make a major projection. Donald Trump has been elected the 47th president of the United States. He'll become the first nominee to lose re-election, but then re-enter the White House in over 100 years. Trump will defeat Kamala Harris in a close race, but ultimately he will become both Joe Biden's predecessor and successor. On the electoral map, you can see the former president has finally crossed 270. He's at 280 electoral votes with 6 states left to go. We're now flying over LA in California. This is where Kamala Harris served as Attorney General. She also served as a senator from the Golden State for 4 years before becoming a vice president. She's already lost this election, but there are a few more states that she is expected to pick up. We're now just an hour away from midnight on the East Coast, but voting is ending out west with polls closing in California, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. All these races are going to be pretty easy to call. Kamala Harris is, of course, the projected winner in California, 54 electoral votes from her home state, a huge win for the Democratic nominee. She will lose Idaho, though, with Donald Trump coming out on top, carrying the state's 4 electoral votes. But Harris will win in Oregon, 8 additional electoral votes going to the vice president, and she'll complete her Pacific sweep with Washington, 12 electoral votes. And so with just 2 races outstanding and the entirety of the continental U.S. now filled in on the map, Donald Trump is at 284 electoral votes. Kamala Harris is yet to reach 250. It is now midnight Eastern time, and voting has finally ended in Hawaii. Of course, Kamala Harris is the projected winner of the Aloha State's 4 electoral votes. And now at 1 a.m. on the East Coast, we can finally call Alaska the last state where voting has ended. Of course, the state will go in favor of Donald Trump for a 3rd time in a row. The former president wins the last frontier state, and it's 3 electoral votes. And so with the map now entirely filled in, Donald Trump is the projected winner of the 2024 presidential election, winning 287 electoral votes, Kamala Harris at just 251. Trump is going to sweep the Sun Belt and win Pennsylvania, Kamala Harris taking just Wisconsin and Michigan out of the 7 battleground states. She has performed better than Hillary Clinton, but not well enough to clinch the presidency for herself. And so on January 20th, Donald Trump will re-enter the White House as the 47th president. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election on November 5th.